we have joining us today a former coworker who is becoming a very prolific horror film director. I've lost count of the films that Joe has directed at this point. Joining us on the show, Joe Lynch. Joe, hey, thanks for coming on the show.
I feel like I should have started with it. Dun, 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 dun,
yeah,
dun,
exactly.
Dun, dun, dun. When I first tuned in, I'm like, why am I looking at Flash and Ming? But every day is a good day for Flash Gordon, I'd say, and also the Queen soundtrack.
Oh my God, I love that soundtrack. Hey, let's feature you full screen here as we get into it. And Joe, first of all, I got to thank you for a couple things. One, we worked together at G4 TV. You are in the Attack of the documentary. You
what an honor.
And just like and on the Blu-ray is your mostly unedited interview is on the Blu-ray, and so just appreciate you being a part of that project. It was just I feel like I got people who told me stories I didn't know. So, and also like you were my fill-in. A lot of people didn't know you were when I was couldn't do DV Tuesday. I was traveling. You would fill in for me on DV Tuesday.
That was like both terrifying and like a huge honor, because now let me back up a little bit and wax your car for a second, Chris.
Yeah.
Ever since you started Film Threat, that was honestly, it was like one of the most important elements of my filmic upbringing, both in mainstream, but mostly in independent, genre, everything, like I would have never been introduced to necromantic or chicken hawk documentaries without you.
Yeah.
I don't know if that was probably the right thing to say, but when we started working together at G4, again, I was such a huge fanboy. I was like, because I had an office, and anytime Chris Gore would like walk past, I'd be like, "Oh, Chris Gore sighting!" I was so excited. And then we started to become friendly, and I was just still to this day, I like Chris Gore. You are a huge part of my cinematic upbringing, and I thank you for that. And I'm so glad to call you a friend. And when they told me that I would be on today, I was like, oh my God, I honestly, I got a little nervous, so please bear with me.
Well, congrats on the film. But then I was trying to count the number of movies, like what, as a director, that you've done. Like where are you now in building your filmography?
Well, this is a perfect time for me to even like expound on my past film works for me to remember. Let's see, Wrong Turn 2, Chillerama, Knights of Badassdom, Everly, Mayhem, Point Blank, and now Suitable Flesh. So seven feature films since I started this whole thing. And what's funny is that for at least 3 or 4 of them, every time that I would make a movie, because gone are the days of 3-picture deals and development deals and bungalows and even residuals in certain respects. So anytime that I would finish a movie, I had to go back to work. I had mouths to feed and bills to pay. So thankfully G4 was always there to say, come on back. And it was such a great way to like keep the home fires burning while I made my, crappy little independent movies. And then that's where I got to work with you again with Attack of the Show. But yeah, like it's, indie films are still very tough, and you like it's not as easy as like you make a movie. And my mom to this day still thinks like, Joey, you made one movie, where's your Porsche, where's your big mansion in the Hollywood Hills? That doesn't happen anymore. But if you love what you do and you still like enjoy the process of making films, it keeps you going every day, even when you have to take those side jobs to pay the bills.
Well, very few of my indie filmmaker friends have butlers. That's what I like to say. It's just, but look, this, and shout out to Knights of Badassdom. Oh man, that movie, so great.
Well, we could spend an entire like section on that and the nightmare that was that production. But it's one of the movies that I hate to poo-poo anymore, because I did for so long, because it was a really hard shoot. The film got taken away from me. We found out it was a Ponzi scheme at one point. But oh yeah, dude, it was like, when we're offline, or maybe for another time, I'll take you through the adventure of Knights of Badassdom.
Was it a producer situation?
It was a financier situation. It was this company that like made everyone think that they were putting in all this money for the greater good. You know, and long story short, when I was told we had like 7 million, we actually had 1 million. So even something as like stupid as like, I want to go over there to shoot. They'd go, sorry, we don't have the money for it. I'm like, what? How? Look at this cast. It was an unbelievably hard experience that I think would have broken most filmmakers. But when when the movie comes out, it's not yours anymore. And as much as I would love to like take people aside when they go, oh dude, I saw Knights of Badassdom on the street, like, give me 45 minutes, let me tell you exactly what happened. You can't dissuade someone's subjective opinion on what they think a movie is. I had an experience with Don Coscarelli, who directed The Beastmaster, right? One of my favorite movies of the 80s, right? I watch it every day on HBO, every other day on HBO. The other day it would be Brainstorm, but Beastmaster would always almost be on. And I met him and we became friends, and I started doing the same thing, like, dude, Beastmaster's my favorite movie. And then he went on to tell me exactly everything that I went through on Nights of Badassdom, how the cut was taken away. It was a beyond difficult shoot. He didn't have any control. And then ultimately the movie that went out wasn't his, but people love it around the world. So it was a very valuable lesson that I learned, where when someone says that they love your movie, you take it in stride and you say, thank you very much. I'm so glad that you watched it.
Well,
So
I'll
thank
tell
you,
you,
Chris.
no, but I will tell you, just like knowing so many indie filmmakers over the years, that sometimes the story behind the making of the movie is better than the movie. Sometimes,
Oh
because
yeah.
it's such crazy. And I do have an affection for like, and movies about the movie business. Like, one of my all-time favorites is The Player. I'd love to do a
Oh
remake
yeah.
of that, but set it present day and have it all be about Marvel movies, right? Like, you
Yeah.
could, there's a way to do it. And I live in Pasadena, which is where the Rialto Theater is, where the murder took
Mm-hmm.
place. Griffin,
Yeah.
like, oh my God, so great. That theater now is turned into a church. They turned it into a church. But
It should be the Church of Cinema. I don't know what
well,
happened there.
I remember seeing Amelie there and other films,
Oh wow.
so great, that theater. So it is what it is. But tell us about Suitable Flesh, which is based on an HP Lovecraft story, and it's out. Is it out today?
It is out as we speak in
Nice.
theaters and on VOD. So if you can't make it to a theater, you can't cuddle up to a loved one in the theater and maybe get kicked out because you got too horny. You can take it home. You can go home and you can watch it on your couch with a bottle of wine and a couple friends, maybe a loved one. Start an orgy. It would be great. But yeah, the movie is it's Suitable Flesh. It's based on an H.P. Lovecraft story, like you said, but it's also a loving homage to the original director of the film, who had started the process of making it, and that was Stuart Gordon, who directed Reanimator, From Beyond, Dagon, Castle Freak, a multitude of other movies. But he was one of the masters at cracking the code at creating modern Lovecraft. And unfortunately, when he was first developing the script with Dennis Paoli, who was his constant H.P. Lovecraft adapter, and Brian Usna and a lot of the cast, we lost him in 2020. And then I got the call like 2 months later from Barbara Crampton, who has now become, not just an amazing actor, but well, she's always been an amazing actor, but she's now a very prolific producer. And she reached out to me and said, would you be interested in doing this? And now, as a huge Stuart Gordon fan and having become friends with him, I got to talk to him about the original story and how he was making this movie, which was originally called The Thing of the Doorstep. So just as a fanboy, I was like, oh my God. And this moment kind of felt like, for me, a little bit like the Kubrick Spielberg dynamic with AI, maybe without the weird ending that Spielberg kind of tacked on. But that baton passing was both really exciting, but it was a lot of pressure. And hopefully people, when they watch it, they at least see that we were paying enough respects to what Stewart was doing. But also, if you know Reanimator and From Beyond especially, there are enough connections in those movies. I almost like to say that Suitable Flesh is a spiritual sequel to Reanimator, because it takes place in the same hospital 40 years later. There's a couple characters that show up that are similar to those who were in Reanimator. There's a lot of the same kind of tones and even shots from Reanimator that we tried to lovingly recreate. So this was our way of kind of opening up this Miskatonic verse, if you will, one that I would love more people, including myself, to be able to tell other Lovecraft stories in.
Well, the other thing I have to, first of all, the movie's bloody gory, is bloody gory. And I have to compliment you. Heather Graham looks so good. I mean, of course, like everyone, like a lot of people, in Boogie Nights, she plays Roller Girl.
Yeah.
And how is she even more attractive now than her debut? And not only that, and look, we just got to cut to the chase. There are several sex scenes in these movies, in this movie, and the sex scenes they're part of the story. This isn't like
Yeah.
something gratuitous where the sex scenes have this whole other layer to it because of things that happen in the film. I don't want to ruin anything. I don't want to spoil too much, but there's a reason that these sex scenes are more meaningful when you know what's happening. And Heather Graham gets very naked in this. You did not hold back. And not just that, one of the best horror posters I've seen this year is for your film, which was so cool. We put it on the Film Thread Instagram because it looks like this classic horror movie from back in the day, like from the 80s. So check out the Suitable Flesh trailer in addition to a trailer and a poster in addition to the movie. But working with Heather Graham and it's a weird thing, we've talked about this, like films that sort of should have nudity and don't, or like movies where, I mean, it's weird how I feel like nudity to me is when used right in horror, and I feel like you used it right in this. What was it like to direct those scenes? Was that a conversation? I also know that when you're dealing with SAG actors, if there's any nudity in the movie, whether an actor is a part of it or not, all actors need to know that the film will have nude scenes. So
Yep.
how do you go about that? Can you explain, maybe in a, not, in like more of a clinical way as a director, how you approach those, doing those scenes so that the actors feel.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you basically gave me 17 questions. I'm going to try to answer them all very, very quickly. Classic Gore. Okay,
yeah.
Really quick. The poster was done by Creepy Duck Design, who does these amazing posters. If you follow him on Instagram, that's how I found him. He's now working on Evil Dead Rise and Scream 6. But we reached out to him to do the poster, and he did a fantastic job. I wanted the poster to kind of emulate those 80s films, but also the kind of VHS boxes that you would see, which is most of the movies that I was inspired by. Heather Graham, you could put her in a burlap sack, and she would be absolutely stunning. I firmly believe that she and Barbara Crampton have portraits like Dorian Gray up in their attic somewhere, and they just do not age, and the camera just continues to love them. But when it comes to the sex scenes, like you were saying, Chris, a lot of the films that we were emulating in this were a lot of the erotic thrillers from like the 80s and 90s, but also a lot of film noir from the 40s. And anytime that there's any sexual relations in that, sex scenes, nudity, any of that stuff, it feels like if you don't have them tethered to the story or the character, if there's no consequence behind them, then it's just a bunch of sexy dissolves and backlit shots and shots close up of people's hands clenching together, and then it fades to black, and there's no consequence. And this was a story that, like, from the script, I knew that sex was going to be a driving force in the story itself. We even had one actor, a big actor, who was like interested, but they said, cut out all the sex. And I'm like, well, then you don't have the story. But I also knew that I had to treat the sex respectably, make it titillating, make it, sensual and erotic. But also, especially in this day and age, you have to make sure that everybody is consensual, everyone is comfortable. We get this question asked a lot, in the age of intimacy coordinators. We didn't have an intimacy coordinator on this, but not by force, but by choice. We went to every one of the actors and said, do you want someone on set? We want to make sure that you're protected. Now, before I even asked this, I had reached out to every single actor privately, but also all their reps, their lawyers, their agents, every one of their team, with a 32-page document on exactly how I was going to shoot it, exactly where I was going to put the camera. I did storyboards for every single scene, which constituted me and my partner like taking pictures of ourselves and drawing over them, making sure that there was like enough butt crack or enough under boob. And so when the actors, even before they got to set or they got to where we were shooting, there was no questions. There was all complete like communication and collaboration between everybody. So there was no like sneaky director sticking a camera between someone's legs and going like, I didn't know it was there, or it's like, oh come on, this is what the audience wants. Those days are gone, and they should have never been there. And it's a great thing that the Me Too movement happened, and that the rise of of pure consent in these films has culminated in a different workflow and a different environment, which I think has dissuaded filmmakers from doing it, because it's not easy. Honestly, when you're on set and you got Phil the Grip sitting in the corner eating a sandwich watching what's going on, not very sexy for the actors to be able to create something that is supposed to be hot and sexy when everybody's standing around you. So it was always closed sets. It was complete communication with my actors, and making sure that they knew how I was going to shoot it, why I was shooting it, the reason why. And in the end, we made it so much fun for them that they were like, let's go. And I think a lot of that shows up on screen.
Yes, Heather Graham goes she's great. It just it reminded me like how really good she is. So and it's a big part of the story. I'll say this. The chat is on fire with questions for you. So I don't know how long you can stick around.
Let's do it. Let's go.
A lot of questions. We're going to start with our super chats here. Matthew Hammond for 499 says, didn't Monty Python and the Holy Grail end the way it did because they ran out of money? Yeah.
Unfortunately, I was not on the set for that film, and I don't have Terry Gilliam on speed dial. You know what? But the thing is, necessity breeds invention a lot of times.
Right.
In terms of like Knights of Badassdom, the ending the way it is, which is this like Animal House title crawl that says like, well, this is what happened to Gunther and this is what happened to that character. That was not the ending at all. That was not because of money. That was because the financier decided, well, maybe they did run out of money, or maybe it was the 7 lawsuits that were up against them. They just decided to slap something on there and then just kind of send it out into the ether and then, let the chips fall where they may. That's not how it happened. But a lot of times, like when you run out of money, I tend to and full disclosure, this is the lowest budget film that I've done with the shortest amount of time. I had just come off of a big budget Netflix movie, but I will say that the amount of creative freedom that I had on this film was the reason why I was able to kind of get away with the stuff that I was able to get away with, and not have too many cooks in the kitchen kind of going like, do you really need that spinning shot? Or do we really need to hold on that shot from the backup camera? None of that happened. But at the same time, you have to, when you don't have the money, you have to rely on your crew, but mostly you have to rely on yourself to come up with creative problem solving ways of making everything happen. Our final day on the set was 18 hours. It was our final day. It was the ending of the film in the big hallway. And we had basically run out of time. We had no more money to like extend the day. So we had to completely reconfigure how I was going to shoot it in a way that would be able to tell the story, get all the character beats, get all the gore, get everything in there. So it's just a matter of making sure that you are as efficient as possible and respectable to the money. And then when, problems arise, which there are many for all you filmmakers out there, there's always going to be a problem that arises. The weather sucks, the actor didn't show up, the camera's not working, whatever it is, you have to be there to problem solve in the best way possible.
Let's see. We have over 600 people watching live, so there's a lot of questions. We'll get through as many as we can. All Twisted Up says, Joe Lynch, big fan, got addicted to Holliston, wish there were more seasons.
That's Me awesome. Too. I wish. I'm actually in Ariscope right now, Adam Green's production office. That's what all this right here is. If you can see, there's a, there it is. There's a Holliston poster right there from season 2 right there. But yeah, I loved that show. I loved being a part of it. I wish there were more seasons. We never say never. Look, if fucking Frasier can be, coming back, you never know these days. So we'll see. But thank you very much for watching it.
Let's see. Goober asks, hey, oh, cool. I had this lined up to check out. How did you find working with Scream Queen Barbara Crampton?
Well, I was introduced to Barbara Crampton thanks to Reanimator. I think a lot of people were introduced to Barbara Crampton thanks to Reanimator and From Beyond. Maybe the cameo she had in Body Double, but she's been a veritable force in the genre for years. And then she very smartly kind of got out of the business for a little while, but then got pulled back in like Godfather 3. And then she's been, such a huge inspiration and influence and a part of this genre. When it came to working with her, she reached out to me before I even knew, we knew each other, but she's the one who reached out to me. Supposedly, and I'm going to put this as legend, supposedly Stuart Gordon had mentioned, my name when she had asked who you would want to work with. I think he said David Lynch, but we'll print the legend. But and that was right during the pandemic. I was about to go shoot the 2 episodes of Creepshow, and we were looking for a kind of older, kind of curmudgeon-y landlord. And when I started talking to Barbara, I was like, you know what? I could actually cast her in Creepshow and show her as a producer, but also work with her as an actor to show her that I can make my days, be responsible. I knew what the hell I was doing. So the first time that I worked with her was on Creepshow, and one of the best times I've ever had working with an actor was on that. Like the first day that we wrapped, she was just like, "Oh my God, I can't wait to make the movie with you." And I'm like, "Oh, good, I've passed the test." Then working with her on Suitable Flesh, I mean, watching this actor slash producer on set is amazing because we would have a 32-page day sometimes with her and Judah in a basement, and they're doing multiple scenes together, and Barbara is just giving it her all. And then the second we call cut, she's like, "Okay, so let's make sure that lunch is here. Did the trailer come? Is everybody good? Are you guys good?" Like, she would put her producer hat on immediately. It was a sight to behold. So any chance that anyone gets to work with Barbara Crampton on either side of the screen is an absolute blessing.
That's great. Let's see, from Razorburn, a question. Joe, what was it like working with Henry Rollins in Wrong Turn 2? I'm a huge fan of Black Flag and the Rollins Band.
Well, I am the biggest Rollins fan. I was before I made Wrong Turn 2. And when I got the chance to make that movie, even when I read the script, it said, like the description of the character was like, Arlie Ermy in Full Metal Jacket meets Jeff Probst in Survivor. And for some reason I went, "Oh my God, that's like a Henry Rollins type. We'd never be able to get him." And then my casting agent, Nancy Nair's like, "Why don't we just call him?" We called him up, and he read it and he went, "That sounds great." And having that guy on a set, he's got the best stories on set. It's amazing the kind of breadth of tales that he's got, both on his music side, on his movie side. I couldn't stop talking about Johnny Mnemonic or The Chase. But his work ethic is so fantastic, where I would go up to him, it's still Rollins, and he's got that piercing stare. He's just like,
Yeah. Oh yeah.
and
Oh, yeah.
and I'm like, "So Henry, I was thinking maybe we could maybe get another take if we can put the camera over here." He's like, "Okay, you want this, you want that, you want this, copy that." And he would do it. And he actually, and I'll keep this very short, he actually pushed himself so hard that he got injured on set. He's always had a bit of a bum knee. And then he's like, "Wait, you're not going to use the stunt double for my fight with that hillbilly mutant. I'm doing that." I'm like, "Yes, you are. Sounds great." So he put himself through the rigor of that, and he kind of hurt his knee. And we were like, "Fuck, man, like we have a lot of stuff to do. We can't lose you, but we also want to make sure that you're okay." And so my producer comes up to me and goes, "Maybe we should what do you think about maybe asking Henry if he wants a massage?" And I'm like, "I'm not going to be the one to ask Henry Rollins if he wants a massage. Why don't you?" And so the producer like sidles up next to him at craft service, and Henry's sitting there eating bananas or whatever healthy snack he could possibly have. And he's like, "So Henry, would you could the production help you out and maybe give you a massage?" He goes, "I don't do massages," and then walks away.
Oh my God.
The man, he's the man, the myth. Henry Rollins is amazing.
Oh my God. So, I actually got to work with him on a TV show called Ultimate Film Fanatic for IFC. He was one of it. Yeah, it was. He was. It's basically like American Idol, but like for film nerds. So we did 2 seasons of it at IFC. He was in the first season. He was so good, and Tatum O'Neal was on that. It was Tatum O'Neal,
Oh, wow.
and Keith David. So
Oh,
oh my God. Yeah. From The Thing, among other great things. He's good in everything. But like, so that was the panel. You can find clips on YouTube. Henry Rollins worked with him. He was the coolest guy because he knew Film Threat. And I was like, I grew up listening to your music. Like I had Black Flag albums, like, on vinyl in the 80s, and worked with him on it. He was the coolest guy, such a professional, like always cared. And the thing is this, he got a job at IFC doing a talk show because of that first season of Ultimate.
That was why?
That was why, because he was on it, and the executives loved him. I remember it was Mike Ruggiero and Evan Shapiro, and they were just like so blown away because Henry, and this isn't going to surprise you. He took everything so seriously of what he was doing. Like he was judging these film nerds, in this, I mean, yes, it was like a cheesy sort of competition thing, but he took everything with the deadly seriousness, and he would learn a lot. It was just like great, like between set, like, because I couldn't talk to the contestants, so I would talk to the panel, and he was always the one I went to. And it was so great to check. He's just like a great person. He's the same on screen and off camera, just like an amazing human being.
Well, I gotta tell you my Henry Rollins story.
Oh, you have Henry
please.
Rollins?
Yeah, because Black Flag performed many times at my grandfather's restaurant during the Chinatown Punk Wars.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so they were a big staple at our restaurant.
Oh, that's great. Okay, Joe, there's 600 people watching live. We have a lot.
Please.
You let me know when you need to go, but
bring it on. Keep going.
Okay,
I'm telling my PR guy to give us a little more time if that's
okay, cool.
So yes, please, let's
Solomon
go.
Pertinez, greetings, Sir Joe. Love the Metallica Rid the Lightning poster in the background. Any advice for beginning filmmakers?
I would be asking this question to all of my heroes when I was starting out, and a lot of times, when you ask that question, it's always like, never give up and always get that script. I would say now more than ever, there is such a wonderful cachet of resources that are at your fingertips. When I started out, I didn't have a film camera, I didn't have an editing suite, I didn't have, other than my family and my friends to be actors in it. I didn't have social media to put out like the word that I needed that kind of talent. Right now you have, and I know this sounds like a cliche because everybody says it, but it's true. You have a phone that has HD. You have, Premiere Pro that you can download on your laptop. You can, put the word out to anybody out there, maybe within your location that you need help, on both sides of the camera. There is such a wonderful array of tools that you can use to be able to realize whatever idea you have, as long as you have that idea. So the first thing is have an idea, whether it's short form, long form, whatever. I would honestly say, a lot of filmmakers in the last 10 years have gotten jobs off of that brilliant idea that they came up with at their house. They shot their wife laying in bed and a spooky monster pops up. And the next thing you know, you have, a studio making Lights Out, so, and then you're making superhero movies. So just don't let the limitations of what you think gets a movie made to stop you, because and this is something that I learned from all the filmmakers that Chris covered in Film Threat all the way back in the day. People forget, like, Todd Phillips started out as this rinky-dink guy from NYU who was chasing around Gigi Allen and making it on no money, and now he's one of the biggest filmmakers in the world. We all start somewhere, and it's not a bad thing to start in the gutter a little bit. And when it comes to just having what you need to make that idea possible, it is right in your pocket, or it's right on the screen.
I couldn't agree more. And Todd Phillips, like, just to see his success with Joker, I can't wait for Joker 2. I know it's going to be good.
Me too.
I know it's going to be good. A $20 super chat came in from someone I think you might know. Corn Emperor for 20 says,
"Oh yeah,
I loved watching Suitable Flesh with you and Scary Perry. The kills were badass, especially that one. Love that you're at Aeroscope. It's the movie Crypt. A hint on what's in your eyesight as your next movie."
Well, very good and very nice to see you, Corn Emperor, again. Thank you so much for coming out to the Collider screening last week, and I really appreciate it. When it comes to the next film, honestly, I have not been able to think that far ahead. I can't think past tomorrow. Because of the strike, I've had to do all the press, which has been a blast being able to talk to you guys, but it's been exhausting. Since we premiered at Tribeca, it's been kind of all me doing the dog and pony show, and I'm sure everyone's sick of me at this point. But I've had to kind of take the mantle and run with it because someone has to. So in terms of next movies, there's 2 scripts that I'm working on now. There's been a lot of talk about like a possible sequel for Suitable Flesh, which is really exciting, or prequel. Who knows? If you see the movie, you kind of get what I'm talking about. So there's a lot of possibilities there. There's one script that is very much in the horror wheelhouse. Like I've been delving out of the horror realm. I mean, I'm never out. I'm never like fully out. All the films that I've made have a semblance of horror in them. Everything from Nights of Badassdom to Everly and Mayhem, even Point Blank to a degree. So I can't fully leave it, but Suitable Flesh was such a welcome return for me to the genre that I love, that I started out with, that I've always been a champion of. So there's one script that is very ensconced in the horror world that I would even call maybe a heavy metal nightmare. That's all I'm going to say. But then there's another one that's based on one of my favorite authors' short stories. I'm not going to say who, but if you know me well enough, you know who I'm talking about, that I've been developing for years with my writing partner. And it is so far removed from what you would expect from me. But at the same time, like, as much as I love horror and I love all these opportunities that I've had, Stuart Gordon was one of those directors that taught me never stay in one box. If you look at Stuart's work, yes, you can look at Reanimator and From Beyond and Dolls, but you can also look at the fact that he wrote Honey, I Shrunk the Kids. He made Space Truckers. He did this crime thriller, King of the Ants. He made the like a kind of weird horror thriller called Stuck. He's never been like, he was never more prolific than in his own work, and he does stuff on the stage. So I want to always be pivoting as much as possible because that's just exciting to me. I never want to make something over again. I never want to do the same thing twice in most cases. That was part of the reason why I wanted to do Suitable Flesh, because I'd never done a Lovecraft adaptation. I've never done an erotic thriller. I've had sex in my movies before. That sounded wrong. You know what I mean?
I know what you mean.
I've had sex scenes in my films, but never to the degree like this. So this was something of a really great challenge. So I'm always going to look for something that is going to challenge me. And those next 2 projects that I'm, working on now, those will definitely challenge me for sure.
How much more time do we have you? Because I know you're getting...
10, 15 more minutes, unless like you're done. Kick me the...
No. We just the questions are
They're
a
rolling.
lot. So let's get through. Let's see. From Rumble, because we're live on Rumble, ADellis24S. How does Joe decide on his Hitchcock-esque cameo in each of his films? Okay.
Okay. So long story short, my cameos are purely by necessity. Every single one of them. And I don't know if Hitchcock was like that too. I think he would just kind of go like, oh, I need to walk through this, this shot. I was a terrible Hitchcock. My involvement in all of my films, from Everly and Mayhem, those were because we ran out of English speaking like Americans who could be in it, because it was supposed to be in America, but we shot it in Serbia. So when we ran out of people that could speak English without an accent, I show up. In Point Blank, the reason why I'm in that one was to piss off my actor Frank Grillo, because we didn't get along at all. So he loved seeing me in the shot. I actually didn't tell him that I was going to be in the scene. So when he walked out and opened the door, he slammed it again and went, "Why the fuck is Joe Lynch in the shot?" And the reason why I was because the guy that was supposed to play the cameraman didn't show up, and we had to wrap out that day, and we had a whole scene with this guy, and I knew that if I put myself in this film, like in this part, that you can't cut it out. It's a major plot point. So as like a fun little way of kind of getting back at Frank, I went, I'm going to put myself in in the scene, and they couldn't cut it out, which was great. The reason why I'm in Suitable Flesh and my luxurious mustache is I have a tradition on every one of the films that I do, is that I grow a big burly beard So I'm looking like Mad Dog Morgan or, Gandalf or whatever by the end. And then on the last day, I shave it all off and I leave a porn stash because look, whenever you're making a movie, everyone is just exhausted by the end. As great and as fun as it can be, and everyone's like part of a family by the end. We're all dead tired. We're ready to wrap. And when you walk on set with a porn stash, the vibe on set gets a lot more fun again because everyone's kind of making fun of you and going like, "Hey, look, it's John Holmes." And it really does work. Every film I've done, maybe even from I think Wrong Turn 2, it worked like a charm. Well, the day that I walked on set with my wrap day porn stash was the day that do you guys know Jonah Ray?
Of course, I know Jonah.
Okay,
So Jonah G4.
Exactly. So
Yeah.
Jonah is a good friend of mine, and he wanted to be in the movie, and we're like, of course you can be in the movie. And the only part that I had for him was this orderly that kind of bookends the beginning and the end of the film. And Jonah, as we all know, is like 8'2". So
Yes.
I wanted him to be one of the orderlies. I had all these shots set up where the orderlies were going to be behind Barbara at all times, and I wanted a little bit of Kubrickian symmetry. Well, the local that we cast to play the other orderly, no one checked his height. So when he showed up on the day, he literally walks up and he's like, "Hey everybody, how's it going? I'm here to be in the show." he was like 4'8", and I'm like, well, there goes all my Kubrick shots. So immediately I go, hold on one second. Wait, just, excuse me. So good to have you here. Hold on one moment. I run to wardrobe. I go, "Do you have any more orderly costumes?" And they're like, "Yes." I'm like, "Great." So then I run back and I go, "Hey, what's going on? So good to have you here. Listen, so, I was thinking when you first walked in, I kind of got this vibe that you're less of an orderly and more of a doctor. How do you feel about playing a doctor in this?" He's like, "That sounds great." And that's why, so that actor ended up playing one of the doctors that brings the paddles in early on. And I had to play, because of my symmetry or whatever, I ended up playing the orderly that he was going to play. So that whole day, that 18-hour day, I would have to, sometimes in the same shot, I would, someone else would have to call action. I would walk on, and now I have my glasses off because I didn't know I would need contacts that day. So I am completely blind in all of the shots you see me in. Then in the master, after I walk out, I even deliberately told Barbara to kick us out so that I could go back outside, put on my glasses, grab the video monitor, and play the rest of the scene as director. It was a nightmare. So long story short, every cameo I'm in is purely out of necessity.
More comments here, and I know your time's limited, so we'll get through.
No, we're all good.
Caveat Ties as a supporter for $2 says, "I've heard the weird ending in AI was actually Kubrick's idea, and some wanted to change it, but Spielberg wanted to stay faithful and keep it." It's interesting. And then
it's interesting. What's funny though is that I don't know if you guys feel the same way. Anytime that I've watched AI since I saw it in the theater, and I remember the moment at the end, spoiler alert, when it goes down into the ocean and then it pulls away. I'm like, the perfect Kubrick ending. And then it goes into that next 10, 15 minutes. You're like, oh, God damn it. And I hate to say it, but it felt very Spielbergian, but maybe not in the best way for that movie. Pro tip, anytime you watch AI, trust me, turn it off right at that moment when the camera's pulling out, and you'll feel like you got a very faithful Kubrickian adaptation.
Yes. Let's see another question here. What was the thought process behind premiering this at Tribeca first from A-24?
Well, it wasn't really a choice. It was more that we weren't finished with the movie in time for, definitely wasn't ready in time for Sundance, and it definitely wasn't going to be ready in time for South by Southwest. Actually, it might have been, but we would have rushed stuff like the mix and the color timing. It would have just been like very rushed version of that, and I didn't want to do that. I like, sometimes first impressions are so important, especially with your premiere. And I felt like, we have to wait, like I don't want to have our first impression be, oh, the movie looked like crap. It's like, I know we already get that from some people, not realizing that was kind of the intention, to make it look like an erotic thriller from the 80s and 90s. Some people don't jive with that, but I wanted to make sure that it was like done. So with Tribeca, and I'm from New York, so, the chance to be able to play in your hometown with my family showing up. My mom sat behind me the whole time during the premiere and goes, "Joey, there's so much sex in this." I'm like, Mom, Mom, that's how I was created. Deal with it. You know? Like, what are you gonna do? So Tribeca was honestly, it was the perfect place for it because they have a good balance between more mainstream independent films and also genre. And they had just started a new kind of faction of the festival called Escape from Tribeca with these amazing programmers that were programming really great genre stuff. So to be able to be part of that just felt like the right kickoff for us, and the response was great.
Cool. Just a couple more comments here real quick and we'll let you go. But the Nerd Far Away asks, Hail, Mr. Lynch. Maybe this may be a difficult question. Do you think non-union actors deserve the same opportunity as union actors? So more of a business question.
Yeah, interesting question. I think everybody deserves an opportunity, whether it's union or non-union. I've worked with both in the past. Right now, tricky question just because of the strike. And as someone who supports the SAG strike just as much as I support our dealings with the Writers Guild and also Directors Guild in trying to be fair and balanced. Right now, I'd say Mr. Nerd Fart Away. I just called him Nerd Fart Away. I don't know if you can use that if you like. I would say it really depends on the production. If it's an independent production that is completely non-union, then pursue those. I think in the end, you're going to want to be SAG to be able to work on some of the bigger opportunities. So, just be careful with how you're, picking your opportunities in this very, very difficult time. And then once, look, the strike is going to end, hopefully very soon. Of course, right after we get released and I have all my actors going, I want to talk about the movie. I'm like, yeah, you can't. Don't get in trouble.
Right.
So it's just it's a very interesting time right now, but I'd say take the opportunities where you may for now, if it's not going to cause any detriment later on. And then hopefully when you do get your SAG card and you get those union opportunities, I'll see you on set.
That's awesome. And two comments that relate. Zodlander asks, where is suitable flesh available for viewing? And Kara says, will it be possible to see it in Europe? So how can people
All right,
see
so right now, as of October 27th, you can see it in the theaters on the big screen. If you follow me on Instagram or on Twitter or X or whatever the hell we're calling it these days, I have a whole listing of all the theaters that are playing it. It's also, if there's not a theater near you playing it, it's also on VOD, everything from Apple to Amazon to Vudu, Spectrum. If you just look it up on your favorite and preferred viewing platform for VOD, it should be on there. It's also going to be on Shudder in January, but also it's going to be, because we love physical media, it's going to be on Blu-ray, I believe, January 9th, with a plethora, for you Three Amigos fans out there, a plethora of special features on there as well. So, and then when it comes to Europe, I believe right now it's only playing in the UK. It's still doing a bunch of festivals, or as we've been calling it on its Fleshtival tour. It's still doing a bunch of festivals in Europe. I'd say stay tuned. Follow me if you need anything, like in terms of more details. But I do believe that it is, as of today, also playing in the UK in cinemas and VOD.
Yeah, it is in the UK today.
And last minute super chat came in from Ozzy's Robots for 2. With the 80s aesthetics, are you constrained by modernity? I don't think there's anything. I think this comes up a lot, like on the show, is a movie. Sometimes movies get a little too lectury, or people feel that like a film is too, as they say, woke, right? And it's like, and so like, did you feel? I having seen the film, I don't think that the film feels very timeless to me, the way you approached it. I mean, just from putting on my critic hat and looking at your movie, it's timeless. You made it to kind of just like, you can watch this movie 10 years from now. You could watch it. You could have seen it 20 years ago. And there's nothing that sort of roots it in any sort of in that way. But do you feel that at all? Like, and just also knowing your work, I just don't think that's something that crosses your mind. You like classic horror,
yeah,
the rest of us.
Yeah, and a lot of the influences for this film were, not just Stuart Gordon, but the films of Brian De Palma and Paul Verhoeven, David Cronenberg, David Lynch, Claire Denis. A lot of these provocateurs that made cinema, and also films of the 80s and 90s, the Skinemax movies or the film noir movies from like the 90s. And a lot of those films, you could take a lot of the stories and even the characters and displace them and put them in other times, other than maybe the use of a cell phone. And obviously, there's a certain backup camera scene that I probably wouldn't have been able to do if this was 15 years ago. So, other than that use of technology as part of the story, I don't think there's anything in this that would constitute it being of its time. Now, when you're talking about the themes and also about just the thoughts about sex in our popular culture these days, there was that study that came out recently and said, like, kids don't like sex in movies. I'm like, well, maybe it's because they just haven't had it in their films. I mean, we're dealing with a marketplace, especially in the studios, that is dealing with four quadrant, a lot of IPs that you can't just immediately inject. You can't have Kylo Ren, having sex with anybody in any Star Wars movie, other than the boys.
Unless it's directed by Axel Braun, and then that's.
I would, yeah, that the Star Wars parody stuff, that does not count, Chris. Get out of here. But a lot of studios are shying away from that, not just because of, like, what I was talking about before with the ramifications of having to shoot sex and sexuality on film, which can be very difficult, and some people don't want to deal with that. But IPs and so these four quadrant movies that are trying to satisfy so many people, sometimes though that sex kind of gets in the way of that. Gone are the days, or at least they mostly are gone, of the mid-budget adult films that studios produced back in the 80s and 90s, and even maybe like 10, 15 years ago. Those have been weaning as of late. Maybe every once in a while you'll get David Fincher to be able to get away with something like that, but for the most part, it's been really tough to put that out there. When it came to the wokeness that we were dealing with, again, I've always felt like it's always good to push a few buttons when you're making a movie, and some people are not going to like it. Some people are. I know that there's some that, like, really did not like the sex in this, and to each their own. Like, I can't help what baggage someone brings to whatever they watch, my films, any other film, what have you. But I knew that I would be serving a certain audience that might be a little thirsty for this type of movie, that might have not seen something like this in a while, that sit there and go, what I'm missing sexy sax from movies. Well, we're here to provide that. So,
well, and one last comment here from All Twisted Up.
Please.
Says there's a screening and Q&A tonight in LA at the Draft House. Is that happening? You're going to be there?
That is, yes, I will be there tonight for both the 6:15 and the 8:15 show. My good friend Ali Goetz is going to be there for it. She's going to be doing the moderating there. Then I'm going to be doing another Q&A at the Alamo Draft House at 6:15. That's going to be moderated by Rebecca McKendry, the director of Glorious and many various other projects. And I would say, if you ever wanted to see me in a very interesting Halloween costume, because I'm going to be literally going from that Q&A to a Halloween party, show up for the 6:15. You'll see another side of Joe Lynch you might never have seen before.
Are you going to play a Hawkman from Flash Gordon? You got to post pictures on Instagram for us. Please post some photos.
Oh, I will. Don't worry. I will definitely be posting it. Yeah.
Good. Joe, thank you so much for spending time with us and answering questions from me and the audience. Congratulations on Suitable Flesh and the big Fleshtival rollout. And one last thing, we are talking about doing a watch party for Attack of the Doc. I'd love to have you join us sometime in December. We're going to get everybody.
Yes, I would love that.
You like a bunch of people who are in the movie and other people involved with G4. We're going to watch Attack of the Doc and then comment on it. I mean, one of the things is I interviewed everybody for about an hour to 2 hours, and it just sort of like crushed me to go like, well, we got 5 minutes of Joe Lynch talking in the film. So love to do a watch party where we watch the film, more comments. So I'll reach out to you when we get ready to do that. But Joe, you're real. You're someone I've known forever, having, met you at G4 and just being in the industry. And I just appreciate that you're real and no BS, and your heart being an indie film and horror. I just love it. And just hope you'll come back and talk to us when you have another movie.
Anytime, guys. And again, Chris, congratulations on the movie. I know that
Thank
was a
you.
labor of love. I was so happy to get the Blu-ray when you sent
Oh,
it a couple
great.
weeks ago. I'm like, oh boy, oh boy, oh boy. You guys really do hold the torch to the kind of cinema that I love, the kind of cinema that I know everybody in the chat loves. And you know what, you're doing God's work basically. So keep up the cinema God's work, please. And Cthulhu loves all of you.
Thank you. Thank you. And on that note, Alan is going to talk more about Dix the Musical. So there you go. We were
Good
talking about,
segue.
yeah, exactly. All right. Take care, Joe. And
Bye,
say hi
guys.
to Greg for me. All right. Later. Thanks again. Take care.
Bye.